And like I said, you know, there was no tuning. There's things that are out of tune at a time, but that's what I love about it, is that vibe.
I saw on your site, Chris, you have a section called Workshop, and I was wondering, is that gear all yours? And, you know, I especially like the Trident console that was pictured.
Yeah, about all the gear I have, it's heavily modified. And I've done it for years and years. I'll do a lot of electronic modifications. And I have friends who do the same, and we go back and forth. We'll take tape recorders from the 1950s and then just make them into the most insane mic pre's you've ever had. And you're the only one in the world that has it. Wow. You can change components like transformers and capacitors, and it just has an individuality. And that's what I use in all our recordings.
Cool. Can you talk about how you got involved with Guns N' Roses and what it was like meeting Axl for the first time?
Yeah, that was. I was introduced to them through Billy Howerdale, who he worked for Tool for a while.
And did a Perfect Circle too, right? Yeah,
he did that. And Billy he's a fun guy, and he was way into computer stuff before many people were. He was doing recordings with it, and he plays a bunch of instruments, and he was like myself. He goes, you know, you work for Tool. How did you get out of this? I'm like, well, you just quit being a tech and you just start doing music.
Right.
And you know, because it's easy to just do that for a living, but it's, you know, it takes a bit of balls to try to survive just being a musician. And he was just too talented. And that's what he eventually did. But he turned Axl on to the Lusk record, and Axl was way into, you know, the guitar sounds and orchestration that we did. And he invited me down to hang out. And you know, the first night I met Axl, I didn't know anything about the band too much besides their big hits they had on the radio.
Right.
And when I met him, he was just like a really cool guy. He was so warm. And we just had a blast hanging out, and he was playing just tons of tapes and stuff. And he eventually invited me up to his house, like a guest house, and it was made into a studio. And we wrote music there for like 3 years, just me and him. It was a great neutral zone without people, bugging you. And a lot of great stuff came out of there. He's just enormously talented. He was playing a lot of lead guitar back then.
Really? Well.
Yeah. Most people don't know that, but I want to give him props up for it because he was just astounding, really.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, he approached guitar like he does his vocals, where, you can't think of anyone in the world doing what he was doing. And I was shocked. He was doing, like Blue Oyster Cult double lead type things. I was like, whoa, he's an amazing fellow.
Well, when you approach writing a song back in those sessions, what comes first? Would a melody come first, or maybe a groove, or how did that work when you first started writing with Axl?
You just never know. If you start trying to predict it or making a formula of it, then that goes out the window. And the funniest instance of us doing something, I was up at his house for about a week or two, and I was setting up, because I'd worked with a couple of film scores before, and they set up, back then, these rack-mounted samplers like Kurzweil and EMU, and you had your kind of fake orchestra with synthesizers. One would be the strings, one with brass, and so on and so forth. And I was setting that up for him, and he came out, and I'm just going, okay, now this module here, we're going to use this for brass instruments. And here you have horns, and he was playing while I was switching the sounds. And I switched the sound to a French horn sound, and he was playing this chord progression. And I went to another sound. He goes, oh, go back to that one. And we went back, and it was a French horn sound, and he kept playing this progression, and it sounded really cool. And I turned around, turned on the tape machine, and that ended up being, and you can hear it today, the very intro of the song called Madagascar.
Wow.
And that's just how that evolved, and he just had this chord progression, and all of a sudden it married with the French horn, and it was a super moody song, and that was the start of that song. And actually, we recorded it really quickly up there at his house, and he just sang unbelievably on that. Great song.
And it's really great that you couldn't go in there and predict, okay, Axl's going to come out with a pretty neat chord progression and we're going to use a French horn sound. That is something that could only happen by complete chance when you were going through the sounds like that. So it's just great that you were able to capture that moment, because look what it turned into. Such a great song.
Yeah, and that exact moment is still on the record today. That's what surprises me, because it takes me right to that,
back to that
very
day.
instant.
When you guys play that live, no, Dizzy actually plays that in the live setting, right? That line.
Yeah, he plays the French horn parts, and I'll play the strings over the top of it, and it comes off great. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah,
but the recording, you just gotta, when you hear these recordings, it's quite astounding. I mean, sound-wise, they're a hybrid of a lot of different processes that have taken years to do, but while doing it at this pace, you will have not heard anything like this before, because who's taken that long to do it,
Yeah.
and to work on it that thorough. So it's quite a sonic feast for people to enjoy.
And kind of on that note, is this an album, I'm talking about Chinese Democracy, of course, that you think needs to be enjoyed like in its entirety? You need to listen to all the songs kind of flowing together? Or is it a song where you can kind of just pick out one song here and there and listen to it? Is it important to listen to it as a entire concept?
It's hard for me to judge that, because I'm too far inside of it to be objective like that.
Right.
To hear it as a whole, I wouldn't think you have to. I think you could drop the needle anywhere on the record and find something, really interesting. It'll take a while for people to absorb it, because it's very rich. There's a lot of information to deal with. It's not a record that's monochrome. It sounds like the same, the band just playing a set. It fuses a lot of different elements together, and that's what Axl's, that's his expertise. He has this kind of collage-like ability to bring things together that you wouldn't have thought.
Cool. And you mentioned Drop the Needle, and I actually bought the vinyl, or pre-ordered the vinyl on BestBuy.com, so you will be able to get this on vinyl, guys, for all you guys who like actual records like me. So pretty exciting stuff.
Well, it's important to buy vinyl. Get the vinyl version, because you're getting high resolution. MP3s are quite. If you get an MP3, it's 90% of the data is lost. To people who don't understand that compression scheme.
Right.
So if you can get the vinyl, it's astounding.
Now, Chris, I'm going to kind of pre-answer this question, and I will say the answer, I'm sure, is yes, but how hard was it, and was it hard to decide out of all the material that you worked on for the album, was it hard to decide which songs were going to be on the final album, and is there anything that you wish that was on it that isn't on it that you might be saving for the future?
Yeah, there's a whole wealth of material. I mean, 10 years, just hundreds and hundreds of songs, ideas, and stuff, and it was really hard to conceptualize down to what would work together, and that was Axl's thing. He made that part happen, and to this day we're still working on what's coming up next, and pushing forward with things. The Chinese thing, okay, cool, it's done, let's move on to the next thing. And it's just moving upwards. And his spirit is to just always, to express himself. He hasn't had to go back to 1987 or whatever yet, for nostalgia's sake. But he very well could.
And how does it feel after all these years of, the press talking about the record, that we finally have a real release date and really only just a few weeks away at this point? How did it feel to hear that the release date was finally final?
Weird and shocking. It still is weird. I just, what? Yeah, I can't describe it really. But I'm happy because now people are getting an idea, because they would just continually bash us in the press, as they love to do, because Guns is just such a popular band. But the end result is we knew what we had, very confident about it, and it's something unique. I think people, once they can sink their teeth into it and get an understanding of it, it will have been worth it.
Great. And Chris, I know that you co-wrote one of the tracks that we've all heard so far, If the World, and it's great that song became part of the Body of Lies movie.
Yeah, especially Ridley Scott. That guy's what a hero.
Brings it back to Blade Runner.
Yeah, and he went through a bunch of our songs, and he picked that one.
Oh, wow. Cool.
And that was great. And, but yet, still, it's, like I said, you haven't heard it in its best form yet, in high fidelity. And it's going to be exciting. That's a fun one. That one actually is going to interpret, really good for like live shows and stuff as well.
Cool. Yeah, well, Chinese Democracy, November 23rd, exclusively at Best Buy. And like Chris said, guys, we should all pick up the vinyl for the ultimate listening experience for that. Chris, where does the nickname Mother Goose come from?
It's funny, I haven't heard that in quite a while, because when Buckethead came into the band, of course, everyone associated with Buckethead has a nickname.
Right.
There's Brain, there's, Throat Rake, and there's great people like that. So, basically, the Mother Goose came from, like a Philip Dick book called Wallace, if any of you have read that. It was just kind of, just one of those funny nicknames, but it kind of came and went real quick. I only hear it from people, associated back then when Bucket was playing with us, and it's kind of funny to hear now. So,
right.
Oh, yeah.